Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network, a service of South Dakota Public Broadcasting. Links to live events and their archives are available at sd.net. Thank you for listening to the South Dakota Network.
We will call the Public Utility Commission meeting to order. It is March 10th, 1:30 p.m. in the Matthews Training Center. I am Chairman Nelson. Joining me in the room is Commissioner Fegan. I'm going to check just one time to see if Commissioner Hanson has joined us on the phone. And we didn't expect Commissioner Hanson. As many of you might know, he is in the hospital after having completed successful cancer surgery, and so he's on the mend, and we look forward to him being back with us for our next meeting, but may not be with us today. With that, we'll take the agenda in order, and first thing is approval of the minutes from the commission meeting held on February 12th and 23rd. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Discussion on the motion. Hearing none. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Commissioner Fegan.
Fegan votes aye.
Nelson votes aye. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. We'll go to consumer utility inquiries. Deb Gregg.
Good afternoon. The Commission received a total of 125 contacts since the last report was prepared for the February 23rd, 2026 Commission meeting. 4 contacts related to telecommunication services, 94 contacts related to electric service, 4 contacts related to natural gas service, 1 contact was related to wireless service, 3 contacts related to wind energy, 6 contacts related to unwanted calls in the Do Not Call registry, 2 contacts referred to 1 call, and 11 contacts related to issues that are not regulated by the PUC. 286 of the 295 contacts received in 2026 have been resolved.
Thank you. Questions? And Deb, did I hear you right? Did you say 94 on the electric side?
Yes, you heard me correctly. We've been taking a lot of calls about the rate increase requests for Black Hills Energy, Xcel Energy, and several of the cooperatives in the area. So we've been busy.
Fair to say those are not popular with the consumers. Thank you. Other questions? Thanks, Deb. Okay, with that, speaking of rate increases, we will go to EL 25-022 in the matter of the application of Otter Tail Power Company for authority to increase its electric rates in South Dakota. And the question is, shall the Commission grant the joint motion for approval of settlement stipulation and approve the rates, tariff sheets, terms, and conditions stipulated therein? And shall the Commission approve Otter Tail's interim rate refund plan, or how shall the Commission proceed? We'll go to Otter Tail.
Good afternoon. My name is Lauren Donofrio. I am counsel for Otter Tail Power Company. On June 4th, 2025, we filed our application to increase our rates. We were asking for a net increase of $5.7 million, which would have been a 12.5% increase. The company thanks the Commission staff for its hard work and collaboration in reaching the settlement stipulation that is before you today. In the settlement, the parties have agreed to a net increase of $3.3 million, which is a 7.74% net increase. We agreed to a 7.09 ROR, a moratorium on new rates effective after December 1st, 2029, and the settlement will result in an interim rate refund that will be credited to customers on their May bills. The company believes the settlement stipulation results in just and reasonable rates. The residential rates, as proposed in the settlement stipulation, are 35% lower than the national average and 11% lower than the state average. We thank the Commission for its consideration in this matter and ask the Commission to approve the settlement stipulation. In support of that request, I have with me Amber Grenier, Matt Olson, Jess Beery, and on the phone, Jason Grenier. We are happy to answer any questions the Commission may have regarding this matter.
Thank you. Staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Staff would rely on our memo, are available for questions, and would request the Commission approve the settlement. Thank you.
Questions? Commissioner Fegan.
You saw my paperwork over here. So my first question, I believe actually was for the phase-in rider and the infrastructure rider, which I thought was Paula Foster's, but.
I'm going to ask Amber Grenier to
Okay,
join.
thank you. So it appears, of course, we put a lot of the rider cost now in rate base, which is appropriate, and I appreciate how staff did that. What is left? It's the reliability part of Millbank, I believe, that's still in the rider. And what other material costs do you see in the future that the activity in those two riders that people could expect in the future?
Thank you, Commissioner Fegan. We have requested that
If you just begin by introducing yourself, please.
Sorry, Commissioner Nelson. This is Amber Grenier with Otter Tail Power Company. We have left in the phase-in rider the production tax credits associated with our wind farms. And in the future, we would have included in there Abercrombie Solar, Soloway Solar, and then some requests that will be coming in the next filing for eligibility in the rider.
Okay, and so I think it's Matt Olson is probably next. So Matt, when I read your testimony on page 4, you talked about the ROE being the lowest ROE for vertically integrated electric utility in the U.S. since 1980. And I'm grateful for how the staff and Otter Tail look out for our customers. I appreciate that. The South Dakota legislature also approves, of course, infrastructure riders, transmission riders, all of that. So when you looked at your rate of return, did you also look at those riders? Because those are guaranteed, right, according to the allowance. So did you evaluate that when you looked at the lowest rate of return in the country?
Hi, good afternoon, Commissioners. Matt Olson for Otter Tail. Commissioner Fegan, I think the reference here is to the approved ROE from the Commission from our last rate case, not necessarily the actuals that result, but when we do factor in those actuals every year, we are looking at the total considerations there.
Thank you. On page 11 of your direct testimony, you have figure 3, which shows a comparison of rates with our investor-owned utilities, which there are 6 in South Dakota. South Dakota Commission has a lot of investor-owned utilities that we regulate. I mean, sometimes you go to a bigger state and they'll only have a couple, where our staff are regulating 6. But you have a graph there that shows Otter Tail in the lower quadrant, certainly. So when rates fluctuate and utilities costs with new plants, the timing, with all those type of increases, are the rate comparisons for residential customers impacted, or how do you see the fluctuation in this rate structure in the graph that you have with new capital and timing of all that?
Yep, Commissioner Fegan, thanks for the question here. This data is based, I believe, on EIA data for, basically comes from FERC Form 1 across the country. So it should include all aspects, including that fluctuation that you're going to see year to year. But your I think, question is on the right path, which is when we have rider collection that even between rate cases, it does cause fluctuation in rates. That should be all addressed in these numbers that you're seeing here.
So Mr. Olson, when I look at this graph, what is it going to look like after, possibly today? We don't know yet because we haven't voted. But what will this graph look like after today on figures 3 of residential? I'm talking about the residential rate group.
Yeah, Commissioner Fegan, an important question, and actually that's the number that Ms. Donofrio referenced earlier, which would be that even after this rate case, if approved as settled, we would still see Otter Tail's rates being substantially below both the national average and our utility counterparts in the state of South Dakota.
So that's the 11%. Okay, I have written down 11% state average, so it's below the average in the state of South Dakota, 11%. Is that correct? So when I look at this graph, you will fluctuate a little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah, correct. And that comparison would be to the average of all the other lines that you see on that same chart.
Oh, you're wildfires too, Mr. Olson. So when I looked at your wildfire filing and I looked at your information, some of it was going to happen after you filed. So it looked like in August, really, you were going to anticipate implementing. It looks like you had a vendor that you were using, the DTN, the costs, I don't know, $4,152 for South Dakota customers. So is that what's in this rate base, is the information that you gave us in the filing, or was any of that updated?
Ms. Donfrey was probably closer to it, so can answer more fully for you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fegan. What is in this case in rates is just the, we hired EDM to help us to create our first wildfire mitigation plan. We have subscriptions to DTN. There are some other costs that just fall into the general labor buckets, and that is for executing on reclosers off when we have done that during red flag warning days and times. But beyond that is not included in rate base in this case.
So when there's an evidentiary hearing, we get to look at a lot of that stuff behind the curtain. But when there's a settlement, we don't know if there was more known and measurable items put in or not. So it appears then it's that $100,000, well, wait a minute, or the $45,000, or what is the amount?
There's, among all the categories, it's expense and it's not capital, but there's roughly around $200,000 total company.
Thank you. In our allocation.
That's in there. You can expect to see in future iterations of this plan that will have more spending on items to actually physically mitigate fire. But the plan that you have in your hands there that was submitted in this case in Discovery was our very first. And we are looking forward to being engaged with the staff as we move through other iterations in the future.
Well, as you know, wildfire legislation was a very hot topic this year, and Commissioner Nelson testified on behalf of the PUC supporting it to really protect our consumers, our utilities, and so I just had more questions about that. So Miss Brittany Melhoff or the utility, I don't know who wants to start here, but it was on Matt Olson's direct testimony, again on page 24, and you talked about the federal tax changes and how that is expiring. Is there anything that you see that is coming down the future that federal tax could change in the next few years? And if that happens, maybe I ask the utility first and then I'm going to ask Brittany second. Because Brittany was on the cutting edge in the nation, or the PUC team in general. I don't know who all worked on that. I just remember asking Brittany a lot of questions when you guys got the tax cut, and we wanted to make sure our consumers were protected with that additional savings. So if for some reason this is going up, what do your lobbyists say federal-wise?
Thank you, Commissioner. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act reduced the income tax, and that sunsets at the end of this year. We haven't heard anything concrete yet. It is our expectation that the current administration would move to make that that tax decrease that was passed under the administration's first term permanent, or at least extend that tax credit. That would be our expectation. But you know, we're sort of at the hands of our members of government to see what they do on that.
So Ms. Melhoff, what would happen if it wasn't extended, and what would your team do? And I don't remember. I just remember asking you questions, so I don't know who was the lead on that one.
Yeah, so I could imagine different things happening at that time, just depending on where the utility was at as far as their rates go and when they were planning on coming in for a rate case or not. I could definitely see a increase in the tax rate, causing utilities to come in and ask for a rate increase. Back when the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act went into effect, staff filed a docket to investigate the impacts of that, and it depended on the utility what the result was, and in that case, and I would imagine something like that could happen again if it was an increase.
We hope not. We hope you don't have to come back and do that, PUC staff. You talked a little bit about the refund, but do you see an average refund? I don't know if I saw that in the filing or not. I know you will be working with staff in the few weeks, I assume, on your notice for your May refund or your credit. What's the average refund, do you think? Have you calculated any of that, or give us a range?
I'm going to have to ask Amber Grenier to join us.
Amber Grenier again with Otter Tail Power Company. Based off of numbers through February of 2026, I think we were calculating about a 21% refund on average for South Dakota customers. And now that'll change with each customer type or each rate code. It'll be different, so it's an average.
So it would be 21% of their monthly bill?
21% of the interim rates that they paid, I believe, is how it works.
Do you have a range of dollar amount for the average customer of Otter Tail or not?
I don't have it right with me, but I can look.
In my last question, and I'm not for sure who should take this, but it's really about large load. So the legislature in 2026 has talked a lot about large load. And you serve North Dakota, you serve Minnesota, you serve South Dakota. And so if large load is not built in South Dakota and it goes to one of the other two states, how would that impact South Dakota customers on reliability, economics?
Commissioner Fegan, it really depends upon how the utility or a utility would structure the rate in terms, or how we would structure the rate with approval from our regulators. Normally, if a new load is added in South Dakota, then costs are allocated to South Dakota for that additional amount of load. The concern with a large load, especially for a small utility like us, is that if you make those jurisdictional allocations for a large load appearing in one jurisdiction, it has quite a big impact on rates overall. And that can cause significant issues if you have a loss of that load, for example, in regulatory lag in between rate cases, for example, if you have allocated, made large changes in allocation because of a single customer that is joining the system. There are other ways of dealing with those kinds of issues as well that would direct assign a lot of costs to the individual large load, and potentially keep them out of the jurisdictional allocations so that there would not be an outsized impact no matter which jurisdiction that large load is added to, so that there wouldn't be a large impact on our customers in any jurisdiction from adding a large load in one of our jurisdictions.
I bet you Commissioner Nelson's gonna follow
I
up,
got a follow-up.
because I have follow-ups, but I'm gonna let him start and then, because I certainly have some follow-ups. The main concern upstairs, and if you remember our legislation 1038, that's probably on the House floor today, is to make sure data centers pay for all their cost. And that's very important to us. So I'm gonna come back and allow Commissioner Nelson to follow.
Yeah, so I'm gonna pick up where you left off. Senate Bill 135, which did its final passage today, requires that any data center load pay all of their costs. And so what I heard in your answer is that apparently your other two states don't have that same type of restriction. Is that correct?
Commissioner Nelson, not entirely. The Minnesota has a very large load statute. It doesn't specifically limit it to a data center, but it does include, it would include a data center. Any very large load, that's what they're calling it. It's a very large load statute, which has similar restrictions regarding, protecting customers from any shift in costs from the data center or new large load to customers. I don't believe we have anything similar in North Dakota, but Otter Tail, we're in the process of drafting a tariff to address large loads and data centers, and we intend to file that same tariff in all 3 jurisdictions. So it would work in all the jurisdictions, and the protections would apply across our jurisdictions. We think that if we have a different way of handling these cases in each state, that will cause some chaos and difficulty in terms of our ability to adequately protect our customers from any impacts should a large load come our way. And it would be in our intent to ensure that does not happen, that our customers would not be footing the bill for a data center or other very large load coming into any one of our 3 jurisdictions.
Okay, so then I'm not understanding something. So 2 of your 3 states have statutes that don't allow those large load costs to be put off on other customers. You're talking about doing a tariff to apply to all 3 states, but before, in your answer to Commissioner Feakin's question, you indicated that these large loads were gonna have impacts on the other customers. So which is it?
Thank you, Commissioner. Well, it's a little bit of both. As I said, it really depends on how the states handle these matters. It is Otter Tail's intention that we will offer and ask for approval in each of our jurisdictions of an identical tariff. If one of the commissions were to say no to that, then we might have some differing impacts among the states depending on how that happens. But our intention would be, and what we intend to file would be a system that does not allow for there to be any of those kinds of shifts of the costs of serving the customer. That being said, there are still market impacts that could occur depending on how much load is added throughout the state, whether it's ours, should we have one, or anybody else brings on a large load. Adding quite a bit of load to the MISO market, which is which doesn't have a huge amount of excess capacity right now, could cause capacity prices to increase, and more demand for energy means higher locational marginal prices, so higher LMPs, and that can impact customers too. And it's sort of unknown at this point how many of the large loads that are being talked about and that we're all hearing about are actually going to occur, and how much impact those large loads might have on prices. From Otter Tail's perspective, we have thought very carefully about how we intend to handle that, and it would be our intention to isolate our customers from both the capital projects, to the cost of capital projects to serve the customer, but also any impacts that that adding a large load might have on prices, market prices for our customers. It would be our intent to shield in both of those scenarios.
Okay, we got that on record. That's good. Because as you begin answering that question and talking about how these large loads could have an adverse impact on the market, and that's something I've been thinking a lot about, and I think it's going to be really hard to fence around that, but you've made a commitment that Otter Tail is going to do that, and that would be the same thing that we would expect. And so I appreciate that. Do you want to ask any more on that line of question? Go ahead.
So you talked about in the beginning a little bit about when a large load comes, and then what if, I think you said, like, what if they exit? I can't remember exactly the word. So I would assume you will have collateral, protection, all of that in the filing to protect, because I know the three commissioners have adamantly said publicly that we will protect residential, business, other commercial customers from the expense of large load.
Yes, Commissioner, that's eminently reasonable and exactly what we would expect. We would not agree to enter into an electric service agreement with a large load customer that did not have appropriate financial assurances for their ability to perform the contract, to guard against stranded assets or any other negative impacts that could occur from an early exit.
And there certainly could be a benefit for residential, business, and commercial customers, because the fixed cost of Otter Tail will be spread out among more customers with a large load, correct? And so some of those fixed costs will be spread out and will help residential, business, commercial customers.
Commissioner Fegan, the preliminary design of the rate is there would be some cost recovered from these large customers that would then, yes, be passed on to our native customers.
Thank you. That's what we wanted to hear today. Could you say it just one more time?
Amber, I want to go back to your answer about 21% on the refund. So as I calculated, if we approve this settlement today, the decrease for residential customers from what Otter Tail is asking to what we may approve today is about a 39% cut. So if we cut that rate 39%, help me understand why the refund is only 21%. I'm sure there's a reason, I'm just not finding it.
Commissioner Nelson, with the interim rates, there's, in South Dakota, we put into effect our proposed rates, and then an interim rate is applied for each specific rate code. And as we worked through the rate design with staff, there were some rates that ended up being higher than what we had originally proposed. So in that case, there's no refund, there's no charge to the customer. It's
okay, and maybe I thought Commissioner Fegan asked you what the typical refund for a residential customer would be. And so that's not 21%.
I only had the average, the South Dakota state average. Based off of some numbers I'm seeing, it's about $3 or $4 per month, so 4 months, $16 refund for each residential customer. But again, it depends on their bill, what they will get, but on average, about $3 to $4 per month.
Okay, does that answer or clarify your question? So the refund should be close to that 39%. Does the fact that we're swapping things in and out of the riders, does that impact that at all?
Commissioner Nelson, no, it's strictly a base rate to base rate look.
Okay.
So the riders are not part of that calculation.
For staff, obviously you all have been focused on the rate case, but as part of this, they submitted revised tariffs that change a lot of parameters other that aren't rate related. Were there any of those parameters that caused you any concern?
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson, for the questions to Joe Rizek with staff. I think we made one small change as it related to some tree trimming language, I think with reference to statute, I believe, but overall there wasn't any significant changes to the tariffs they proposed that. So I believe all the changes they're proposing in the original case should be, for the most part, part of this settlement.
Okay, then if I could ask Otter Tail, the only one that I flagged, and this was on your irrigation service, so it would be section 11.02, and that's where I think you're going from, on the fixed charge, going from an annual payment to, and then it looks like a payment over 7 months, and my question is, why not over 12 months? And I'm assuming they're paying a bill over 12 months.
Commissioner Nelson, I will try to answer this, and I may phone a friend if I need help. With the irrigation service, a lot of the times they're only running through May through October, November timeframe, so they're really only getting a bill for 7 of the 12 months.
So those other 5 months, they're not getting a facility charge, and those other months, they're getting no bill. Is that right?
I believe they are shut off during those months.
Okay, I don't want anybody to fall off their chairs here. I don't have any more questions, and I'll tell you why. When I read through your submitted case and your application, it was clear, it was clean, it was understandable. And then when I got the staff memo, I mean, it is doubled down on that in spades. It was very evident that there was an iterative process here between the company and our staff to get to the right answer. And there was give and take where there needed to be, there was correction where there needed to be, there was drilling down where there needed to be, and I've been doing this a long time. That may have been the finest memo I've ever read. I mean, just phenomenal in what you all accomplished and making it clear how you did it. If this had gone to a hearing, I'm a little sadistic in that I'd love to dig into the ROE part of it, okay? I'd love to dig into that, but we're not going there. And I'm not going into, confidential to go there. That I would have found interesting, but it was really, really well done. It answered my questions, reading through the case and reading through your memo, and so I have no further questions. Commissioner Fegan.
And that means a gold star for both involved. Just a couple more questions. On the plant outage, Big Stone was 2021. When is your next planned outage for Big Stone? You did a 3-year normalization.
And so it looks like Coyote certainly is the 3-year. I can't quite tell Big Stone, because you filed in 24, or the 24 was your test year, I guess.
Commissioner, this is one that's a little bit off normal, and the reason for that was that we had an exciter failure at Big Stone plant and had some significant downtime because of that exciter failure. During that time, we were able to do a lot of the things that we would normally do during an outage. We took advantage of the fact that, unfortunately, the plant was down, but we don't let that opportunity go to waste, and our folks did a lot of the things that we would normally do in a full overhaul during that time period. So we actually have a little bit longer period between overhauls right this minute. And we're looking at a 2026, March through May approximately of 2026 for the next overhaul, and then we'll be moving to a 4-year, up to 3-year. Oh, sorry, that's correct the first time.
3 years, right?
4.
Oh, it is 4
we're moving
years,
to a 4-year.
because this was normalized for 3.
It was. We used to be on a 3-year, and we are moving to a 4-year. We've found some efficiencies, things we were able to do, as well as there being that little gap, longer gap between the two this time because of being able to do some things during the exciter failure.
We haven't fully transitioned to the 4-year, but the next case that we would file, it would be on that 4-year schedule because we'll still be transitioning to that.
So for staff that worked on the outage portion, was that known or measurable, the 4 years?
Excuse me, this is Brittany Malhoff for staff. We're talking about Big Stone, correct?
Well,
Or Coyote?
I suppose it's all the plant outages.
Yeah.
I had questions about Big Stone, but
Okay.
you
Yep.
did a 3-year average, right?
So for Big Stone, the settlement actually is based on a 3.5-year cycle to reflect that transition that Otter Tail was just describing.
Okay. That's helpful, because I read it 3 years, so that was my mistake. I don't have any, clarify question, because I had to try to figure this out in math sometimes, because I couldn't really find it anywhere, and I'm sure it's somewhere, I just could not find it. So for residential, Otter Tail asked for 13.8% increase, and you agreed to a 8.49% increase on residential. Are those numbers correct? And then I'm gonna ask you, the overall is 12.5, which we can all see that. And then you did confirm that that was 7.74% increase on the total rate case. But for residential, it was kind of hard to find, but I think it's 13.8 was asked and 8.48.
Yeah, that's what I think.
And that's what Commissioner Nelson did to confirm, but I just want to make sure that those are the numbers before I publicly state those.
Or if we could have a moment to check, that would be
Sure.
great. Thank you so much.
I'm sure the staff have it right in their head. It just took me a while.
For residential net increase, it's 8.49% is what we have.
Thank you, so that is correct. And then you were asking for 13.8 for residential?
Question.
13.84, we better add the 4 behind 0.84. According to Commissioner Nelson, I wrote 13.8. I was doing shorthand. I just want to make sure that is confirmed before Because that's the questions that Commissioner Nelson will be asked by the media right after this.
Thank you for thank you for the time, Commissioner, to take a look at that. I believe that our residential was initially 14.03%.
Okay, and then the settlement is still 8.49. So I was wrong on the first one. Okay, thank you. I'm glad I clarified. Those are my last questions, Commissioner Nelson.
Well, that obviously begs a question because I came up with 13.84, and so I'm trying to figure out why you're different. And so I'm looking at your customer notice that you issued when you filed the case. You indicated that the average monthly electricity cost for residents was $103.97. The proposed increase to the monthly bill was $14.39, and that comes out to me to be 13.84%. Where am I wrong?
Commissioner, it could be that the document that I pulled up is not the correct one to get that percentage from. We take a lot of different looks, and that may not have been the correct look. We can certainly take a few minutes to...
Yeah, the one I've got looks like this, if that helps at all, the format of it. Anybody else has the answer?
Yeah, Commissioner Nelson, this is Joe Rizek with staff. I'll try to answer it. The 13.84, I believe, was on the interim notice, which would be attachment B to their interim. To their interim notice. The 14, I believe, was what was originally filed with as a part of another statement, but there was some updates that took place before the interims went into effect. So I believe the 13.84 is the correct, and I believe the 8.49 is the settlement.
Yep, good, yeah. So for our comparison, we should use the 13.84, you think?
Yes, I believe that would probably be the proper, because the 14 has a slight, I would say, well, it was adjusted a little bit before interim went into effect.
Well, they're both right. They're just coming from a different. I thank you, Joe. I understand exactly what transpired there. Thank you. Okay, any additional questions? Motions?
Mr. Chairman, in EL 25-022, I move the Commission grant the joint motion for approval of a settlement stipulation and approve the rates, tariff sheets, terms, conditions stipulated therein. And that the Commission approve Otter Tail's interim rate refund plan. And that's it.
Discussion on the motion.
With that, my favorite statement that you made was your very first statement. And you came to the microphone and stated your gratefulness for collaboration and hard work of our staff. That's pretty cool. Thank you. So for Otter Tail Power, you have been out since 2017 when you filed in 2018, but you look at 2017 and that's the last time we looked at your rate base. And operating and maintenance costs have increased. You have capital and infrastructure investments that you have made. But what I admire about Otter Tail is that you live with your customers. You live in their neighborhoods. And you focus on your customers. I feel like I understand reliability and safety is your number one focus, but I feel like customers is right there. And then you have looked at just and reasonable rates with our staff. And I certainly appreciate that. I love how conservative your organization is. You are in 3 different markets. You're one of the smallest utilities in the US. But you perform an excellent job of maintaining your rates at a just and reasonable rate, yet safety and reliability and customer service is very at the top. And I certainly appreciate that. So with that, I appreciate the staff working so hard to see what could be taken out of your 12.5% increase that you asked for. And now the overall is 7.74% total increase. As you know, the residential customers, I guess, was about 13.84 you asked for, and it's about 8.49. So I just went to the calculator that everybody does with AI. And I looked at what AI looked at. And you look at $100 in 2017 and $100 in 2024, and that's 27.90. Additional to the 100, so $127.90 is the purchasing power or the CPI. And I appreciate the graphs from figure 3, I think it was, on residential customers and your commercial customers on how you do it in a just and reasonable rates. But once again, my favorite quote. Collaboration and partnership with our staff.
Thank you, and I've already given my thoughts on the job that I think our staff did in bringing this together. I appreciate both sides working extremely hard to do that. I appreciate Commissioner Fegan's reference to the inflation rate. I'm going to throw 2 other figures in there that analyze the exact same time period, but just a different way of looking at it. Since the last rate case, this represents about 1.2% increase per year. 1.2% per year. General inflation has been 4.1. And so we've kept this at less than a third, the rate of general inflation, and that is phenomenal. And I would guess there's few other commissions and utilities in the country that are able to do that, but that's what we're here for. That's what we're here for. That's why the people elected us, in order to keep rates as reasonable as possible. And then as I indicated earlier, our staff was able to cut the residential request by 39%, and that's significant. And on behalf of the people of the state, I want to say thank you to each of you for the role you did in achieving this. And so I will certainly be supporting it, and we'll see another 7-8 years from now. That'd be fine.
Moratorium.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't forget about talking about the moratorium.
Yeah,
and so we're grateful for the staff to add, it's a 4-year moratorium, right? A 4-year moratorium unless there's some unforeseeable catastrophe, but that's a big deal to have a 4-year moratorium. That saves our ratepayers costs of doing another rate case sooner, and plus keeps their rates stable. So we appreciate that.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed nay. Commissioner Fegan.
Fegan votes aye.
And Nelson votes aye, motion carries. Thank you all for coming over to have a visit today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That takes us to EL 26-003 in the matter of the application of Black Hills Power doing business as Black Hills Energy for authority to increase rates for utility service in South Dakota. And the question is, shall the commission suspend the imposition of the tariff for 180 days beyond February 19th, 2026, and shall the commission assess a filing fee for actual expenses not to exceed $500,000, and shall the commission give the executive director authority to enter into necessary consulting contracts. And I'm gonna go to staff first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Amanda Reese for staff. Staff received Black Hills' application for an increase of rates, and today we just asked the commission for the general housekeeping items we always request, which is a suspension of imposition of the tariff for 180 days, the imposition of the $500,000 filing fee laid out in statute, and authority to enter into consulting contracts. Thank you.
Thank you. Black Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Jason Kyle for Black Hills. We have no objections to any of it.
Thank you. Questions? Motions? In EL 26-003, I move that the commission suspend the imposition of the tariff for 180 days beyond February 19th, 2026, and that the commission assess a filing fee for actual expenses not to exceed $500,000, and that the commission gives the executive director authority to enter into necessary consulting contracts. Discussion on the motion. Obviously, the first of these is the most important, and that is the fact that we're not going to allow Black Hills to impose this tariff immediately, but rather we're going to give it 6 months while we go about evaluating this particular rate case application. Additional discussion.
And we are getting a lot of comments on this rate case. So after 180 days, they are by law, they can put in the rate, yet we still have another 6 months to review it and make a final decision, just for the record, correct?
They can put in the rate if they choose to. Right. That is correct, yes. Additional discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Commissioner Fegan.
Fegan votes aye.
Commissioner Nelson votes aye. Motion carries. That brings us to PS 25-003 in the matter of PUC staff's complaint against Black Hills Power, doing business as Black Hills Energy. And the question is, shall the commission approve the settlement stipulation and agreement, or how shall the commission proceed? And once again, I'm going to go to staff first on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jenny first for staff. Staff would just request that you approve the settlement and are standing by for any questions you may have on it.
Thank you. Black Hills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is Douglas Law. I'm appearing on behalf of Black Hills Power, and we also support the settlement and ask the commission to approve it. I'd also like to thank the commission staff for its cooperation, patience, and understanding in helping us achieve this settlement, and also thank the commission for its guidance and during its deliberation in our motion to dismiss. I think that helped give us some thoughtful guidance over pipeline safety that allowed us to achieve the settlement over the disputed issues. So with that's all I have to say for Black Hills Power.
Thank you. Questions? And I'm going to begin, and this is going to be for staff, and I'm looking at the settlement, page 5, and this is going to be top of page 5, actually paragraph 6. And none of this is confidential, correct? Okay. It says that staff and BHP have agreed that BHP will file a petition for declaratory ruling with the commission to determine whether a permit is required under 4941B for the Lang 1 pipe that was done like 24 years ago. And so I'm just trying to play this out in my mind. If we approve this, they would file a declaratory ruling. If, and this is just hypothetical, if we said in that ruling that yes, they should have applied for a permit, what happens then?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jenny first for staff. Then they would apply for the permit and pay the statutory fee, and we would go ahead just as if they were freshly applying for that permit.
Okay, so typically when we do a siting permit, a large amount of that evaluation per statute is what would be the effect on the health, safety, welfare, environment of the people and the place if this project is built and operated. It's all prospective. Obviously, in this case, it would be anything but prospective. What what would be the purpose of going through that, and what do we accomplish by going through that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jenny, first for staff.
And what if we find that it shouldn't have had a permit?
So based on statute, I'm just getting the numbers up here. So 4941B1 says a facility may not be constructed or operated in this state without first obtaining a permit. And then 4941B34 says, or who constructs, operates, or maintains. So the fact that they are operating without a permit in staff's mind is a violation. So the point of going through the permitting process, if you decide that it needs to be permitted, is so that they are now in compliance and operating under that permit since it's already constructed. We won't be looking at construction, we'll be granting them basically the ability to operate that pipeline.
And if we decided to not issue the permit, I guess it would be pretty much like any other permit we've issued and decide to revoke. Where you've got a project operating and they violate a condition or something like that. So they'd have to cease operating until they resolve whatever our concern was.
Yes, that is correct.
That
We
right?
could shut it down, yep.
That's all the questions I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'll never forget when we don't, as commissioners, we don't get to see anything until it's filed. It's rare that the PUC staff file a complaint. And I'm thankful when they do, because then the three commissioners get to see behind the curtain. Our staff work nearly every single day, but at least every week, on trying to work with constituents or utilities to not have it elevate to this level. And this one did. And so when it does, as a commissioner, I take notice. And so when I read the violation, the filing of the complaint, and it appeared that the staff found it during a routine inspection, right?
Yes, that is correct, a pipeline safety inspection.
And so I want to be assured that the staff, when they're in the field and they identify something they believe is a violation, that the operator, and this is Black Hills Energy or Power, is always forthcoming with our staff. That are just trying to do their job effectively. This is pipeline safety. This is important. We represent PHMSA, and our staff work very hard to maintain the high level of audits we receive and remarks that we receive from PHMSA. But from this complaint, I feel like maybe staff doesn't believe, or I don't believe, that Black Hills Power was completely candid with the information from the beginning. So for Black Hills staff, for Black Hills, is that a fair interpretation of what I saw? And then I'm going to ask staff the same question.
This is Doug Law on behalf of the company. I don't believe that's we would assert that's not an entirely accurate portrayal. I think there was miscommunication that led to frustration, that led to ultimately more explanations. Black Hills is very concerned about safety. I mean, we operate in 6 gas states, so pipeline safety is paramount in all of our states, including in South Dakota. And I think in this case, where you had, at least if you go all the way back to Leng 1, we don't have any records to demonstrate now exactly why there wasn't a permit for Leng 1. Leng 2, if you recalled from the deliberations on the motion for dismissal, we had a contractor who was tasked with the responsibility for getting regulatory permits. He does a call-in, doesn't follow up on the guidance he got from pipeline safety staff, and then ultimately when you come over to lane 2, which was the ultimate issue at here, that's where I think there was a breakdown in the communication between us, and every time we tried to convince the staff that, you know, we were really compliant, or what can we do to get compliant, and then we would try to demonstrate to them, you know, how we think we're compliant, or how we would have caught it, or why this wasn't transmission. That sort of led to further confusion and further frustration, which then ultimately led to the complaint. So I think since then, I mean, I think the most important thing out of this, Commissioner, we hear you. I think we're going to try to take this complaint as another opportunity to number one, deepen our knowledge of the Commission's pipeline safety rules and regulations, and then more importantly, to strengthen our relationship with the Commission's pipeline safety staff. As you know, just from an outsider's perspective, if you think about Black Hills Power, across the whole Black Hills family of corporations, we may have 30 to 40,000 miles of gas pipeline. Black Hills Power has probably 5 miles, and the lane 1 is the long line that goes under the interstate across one other entity that has storage of machinery, and then onto our property. All of these pipelines have since been inspected. There's been no significant violations, so we've been operating them in a safe manner. It was just a case of notice of construction, notice of permitting. We have found one case where, you know, the actual jurisdiction does not actually attach until you connect it to the pipe. So as we said in our motion to dismiss, you know, if our intention is now to move to a non-regulated position, then there is no violation. So I think a lot of this can be summed up between more in the miscommunication than in an intentional effort to deceive the staff. And we will admit there was frustration based off that communication, but I think our goal going forward is to get a stronger relationship, demonstrate, you know, some of that communication in a better way, and have a point of where the staff can trust us, and that if there's an issue what they perceive, it's not just them stumbling on it when they come out after an inspection, but that we're having ongoing communications to sort of alleviate that. So if we're going to do something, they're aware of it beforehand, and if they have an opinion that's different than our interpretation of your rules and regulations, then we can address those before we get to the complaint stage.
So I'm gonna go to staff next.
Thank you, Commissioner Fagan. I would just say, as staff laid out in our complaint, after we alerted Black Hills Power to these violations, the statements that they made to staff in our meetings and trying to figure out what was going on were not accurate according to the evidence that they themselves gave us, what was witnessed by pipeline safety staff, and what was found out by commission staff. Eventually, we ended up agreeing to disagree on the specific facts to reach the settlement.
Okay, thank you. So I know I'm not supposed to use the word pride, but I have a lot of honor of our pipeline safety staff. They are very respected across the nation, and some of you know that I'm involved in pipeline safety at a national level, and every time I go to a meeting, they ask about our staff. And they're on national committees, they help with new regulations. I mean, they're at the table and asked to be at the table often. And so I respect, I definitely respect their knowledge, but more importantly, I've done an inspection with them before and watched it. They're very respectful, they're gentle, and they become a partner of the operators to make sure their safety and reliability is at the top level. And so when I read this complaint, I appreciate staff, first of all, submitting the complaint, and I read it maybe a little differently than Black Hills is portraying. So Black Hills, when I read the complaint, I saw a lot of excuses actually of not knowing, or the contractor, or misunderstanding. I mean, every word I felt like there were a lot of excuses. And so, like, how many attorneys does Black Hills Energy have?
lawyers total in our company.
Correct.
There's probably, let's see, two in Nebraska, one in Arkansas, two in Denver, and then I want to say there's 5 lawyers in Rapid City, maybe missing one. Todd Brink just retired, so he would have been the South Dakota lawyer, or he's retiring. He isn't actually, effective date isn't yet, but so that's how many lawyers we have. I think from gas lawyers, I would. Then there's one in Wyoming, I guess. So we've got 6 gas lawyers, and then the rest are either electric and or gas.
Okay.
But there's very little natural gas activity in South Dakota. I mean, that we don't, as you know, we are electric utility in South Dakota for the most part, except for the gas lines that serve the power plants.
Okay. So my favorite part, I think, of the settlement that I see that is in front of us today is regular meetings with pipeline safety staff and Black Hills. I certainly appreciate that in the settlement. So for Black Hills Energy, the penalties that are assessed, can you just confirm that that will not be put on ratepayers' expense?
That's true.
Okay, thank you. And I was surprised a little bit about the settlement didn't have, you couldn't settle on the transmission line. And that there will be a new docket opened on the declaratory ruling. And I think that will be very interesting. That'll be an interesting docket to look into, understand if there's a transmission line or not. But I want to reassure the public that when a developer or a utility needs a permit and they don't have a permit, there will be consequences. And developers should not come into South Dakota thinking that they don't need a permit, because we're just not making that important. So it'll be fascinating when we look at that declaratory ruling docket. I think those are my last questions.
So I want to ask another question. I'm going to ask this to both staff and Black Hills, going back to my earlier questioning about the declaratory ruling. And in that paragraph that refers, it says that we are going to, if this is filed, when it's filed, we will determine whether a permit is required. And so my question is the issue there whether it's required because of this large time lapse or because of the type of facility it is? I'll go to staff first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jenny first for staff. In staff's perspective, that line is a transmission line and cannot operate until it has a permit. We did not tell them that they had to shut it down, obviously, because people in Rapid City needs power. But in our view, it needs to be permitted to operate based on the laws. And so it's not about the time that's lapsed, because in our view, it needed it from day one and it's needed one every day since. It's just getting them in compliance, getting a permit on the books, and keeping them in compliance in the future.
Okay, so I'll ask Black Hills the same. As you read that particular paragraph, are we talking about the whether a permit is required? Is that because of the lapse of time or the type of facility or something else?
No, it's the type of facility. I think there's also some, we haven't, to be honest, we haven't mapped out entirely what the scope of the declaratory order will be, but we agreed with staff, that we both look for, is there some existing statutory waiver language, and we weren't readily finding anything we felt comfortable with in agreement. So we thought maybe the next best step would be to, seek a declaratory order. And then part of our application is that we look forward, maybe like, okay, recall in our motion to dismiss, we said, is there estoppel or waiver or some other sort of actions the commission could follow on, or is there other parts of that statute that, to your point, could they modify as far as the public noticing or the prospective portions of that statute, which may not make any sense for administrative efficiency or even in application, given the length of time this line has been in place and operating, under view of your staff, under the PHMSA review, paying taxes, all the things that go along with a line that's been in service since 2002. So we agree with staff. We're going to work with them, and as Commissioner Fegan said, to collaborate with them on exactly what that application should look like, so that when we come in, I think there's a common understanding of what we're asking for and what we expect to happen from there.
Thank you. I appreciate responses from both. I have no further questions. Commissioner Fegan. Motions.
Mr. Chairman, in PS 25-003, I move the commission approve the settlement stipulation and agreement.
Discussion.
Thank you, staff, for submitting the complaint, so the three commissioners can look behind the curtain. I appreciate that. That doesn't happen very often, and I'm grateful you did it this time. Pipeline safety, I'm passionate about safety. Black Hills Energy, or Black Hills Power, they made a mistake. And this fine of $40,000 that the PUC is assessing demonstrates the seriousness of safety for our pipelines. But just for the public, be assured that our pipeline safety staff have been out there and to make sure that the public is protected. And so they have certainly worked with Black Hills Energy quickly to make sure that everything is safe. I think it's hard for staff to bring a complaint to the commission, because I think staff feel often that the commissioners think you guys should just work it out. But this commissioner is grateful you brought it forward. It really supports the pipeline safety and how our program is held at a very high standard nationally. Our pipeline safety staff, safety is number one. And it is being respectful with our operators and working together as partners, but we also need to obey the laws and the rules. And character and ethics is everything. And I appreciate that the pipeline safety have brought it to the attention of the PUC attorneys. And it's not about bending the rules. It's about following the rules and making sure we're adhering to our agreement with PHMSA.
Additional discussion, I'll add just a couple of things. First of all, after the motion to dismiss, and I got a little bit familiar with what the issues were here, I came away with the thought that this issue really begged to have a settlement and not go beyond a settlement. So I want to thank both sides for bringing this to us as a settlement and not a knockdown drag out, because I just don't think that would have been appropriate. The only hang up I've got with the settlement, and it's what I've been asking about, is this idea of going back and doing a permit for something that was built 24 years ago. But, Ms. First, I think you made the point that, has probably swung me to support this in whole, the fact that even though the building is done, the operating is not. And so I will support this in whole. How that declaratory ruling unfolds and whether, as Mr. Law said, is there, a practical way of, if we find that it requires a permit, is there a practical way of doing that 24 years in arrears? I don't know, those are all questions that I have in my mind, I don't have answers, but the things that I'm thinking about. Additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor will vote aye, those opposed nay. Commissioner Fegan.
Fegan votes aye.
Nelson votes aye, motion carries. Don't see anybody here for public comment. The only announcement is our next regular meeting will be on Thursday, March 26th, 1:30, and we're back home in room 413 of the State Capitol building for that meeting. Anything else for the good of the order? Is there a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Those in favor will vote aye, those opposed nay. Commissioner Fegan.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson votes aye. We are adjourned.